news specific disaster that we're facing at the moment, how much are you having to spend additionally to deal with those wildfires on an annual basis?
So the good thing about the wildfire vehicles is that the cost themselves is around the £400,000 mark, because they're about £100,000 a piece in terms of those vehicles. But we were able to reprioritise what we spent on those vehicles because we took a decision not to purchase a fifth hose layer, which is a large vehicle. And actually, when we looked at it on a risk basis, there wasn't the requirement to use that vehicle. And actually, we then reallocated the capital spend to the wildfire vehicles. So those were the overarching costs. But actually, in many ways, it was able to be held within our overarching capital budget, because instead of purchasing that vehicle, we were able to use these 4 vehicles. And of course, we were before we purchased them, having to lease them in, which was at a cost of around £20,000 each. So in terms of value for money, it's absolutely value for money, and it's also matched against the risk that we're currently dealing with.
But thank you for that. But I think the point is really that you are already spending money dealing with the climate crisis, and actually, if we don't provide the solution towards that, those costs are just going to keep on going up.
That's completely right. So we're certainly spending money on dealing with climate-related weather issues. That's absolutely true. But what we also have to do to make sure that we're spending the public purse in the right way is think about where we're spending it elsewhere, and actually could it be reprioritised and think differently about that spend, because we do need to try and make sure we're doing it within our overarching envelope. But it is challenging us to think quite radically around where we're going to put our resource moving forward. And that's really the ultimate challenge, as I was saying right at the beginning, is our continual reassessment of the budget, of the posture of the organisation to reflect the risk that we're currently dealing with.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'll move on to the Deputy Mayor now. When I go and visit fire stations and speak to firefighters, I get the passion that they have for London, and many of them have strong local connections with this area. But one of the biggest challenges they face is similar to the challenges faced by all Londoners around housing. One of the announcements that we've heard is around building 6,000 key worker living rent properties across London. How will we make sure that those are unlocked for firefighters to be able to access them, so that our firefighters on the ground can both live and work in London?
Yeah, I mean, this is a new tenure, as you know, but it will feature prominently in the next plan as a preferred tenure of the Mayor for affordable housing. And firefighters obviously being absolutely some of the most key workers we have in London, they will be able to take advantage of that.
So, as part of the plan at the moment, how will you know that what measurements are you going to put in place to know that you have been successful in terms of ensuring that these critical frontline workers are able to stay in our great city?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to pass you to the Deputy Mayor for Housing, who oversees that policy. I'm sure they have got metrics about who will be occupying and who will get access through those, because obviously that I would have thought it's inevitable that effectively the gateway would be the boroughs. I don't think there's going to be a central register for applicants. I would imagine it's going to be managed through the boroughs in the usual way that other similar designations have been handled for intermediate housing.
Fair enough. And Commissioner, I guess in terms of what support do you provide as the LFB to frontline staff to support them around some of these housing challenges?
Well, we do provide a scheme around single occupancy. So we've got a number of sites that we do make available to our staff who meet a particular criteria in terms of cost of living and living on their own. So we do provide that support. But I welcome anything that opens up possibilities for key workers to be able to live and work in London. The more we can do to support that, the more we will do.
And as the voice of firefighters across London, what would be your ask of the Deputy Mayor in terms of these properties that become available and making sure that your staff can access them?
Well, I think it's exactly that. I think if the opportunity presents itself, it's making sure that London firefighters have the opportunity to access the opportunity that other key workers are going to have, and we will certainly support that, and I'll be keen to make sure that that happens.
Thank you very much.
Now, just before I bring in our next speaker, I saw Assembly Member Polanski indicate, was it on the climate change issue you wish to?
Yeah, that's right.
Fine, I'll take you then. Assembly Member Polanski.
Thank you very much, Chair. Commissioner, I saw the news this week that there's a whole street of houses in Wales that are having to be demolished because of the fact that they keep flooding. A conversation I had regularly with the former Commissioner, I don't think we've had so explicitly, is the danger of if there's, say, a wildfire one summer and then the ground is very dry, then the risk of flooding because of there's not space for sustainable urban drainage necessarily. And what work is being done to face not just one climate crisis, but actually the domino effect of several things happening all at the same time?
That's a really, really good point, because what you do get is the confluence of risk coming together. And you're right. Ironically, when you have a significant area that's burnt and had issues associated with wildfire, it stops the drainage being where it needs to be going forward, so it makes it more likely to flood. That's one of the reasons the vehicles that we've purchased are actually multi-purpose. So during the summer they can be used for wildfire provision, but during the autumn and winter they've got the capability of assisting with our flood response. But it's about good land management. It's also about making sure we continue to have enough green spaces to enable drainage to happen. You know, we don't want to see too many areas concreted over, for example, because that prevents drainage and leads to large area fluvial flooding. But the two things do go hand in hand, and that's why we have to be flexible in our operational response. And the new all-terrain vehicles that we've got will provide that wildfire capability during the summer and then assist with our flood response in the autumn and the winter.
Thank you. And I don't want to get into hyperbole, but also it's not hyperbolic to say that wildfires and floods are coming. We know that's a fact. We also know when we look at places like Valencia, the risk of loss of life, sadly, is certainly a possibility, if not a probability. Are you confident that the fire brigade are resourced as much as they need to avoid loss of life?
So I am. We have the resources to deal with the risks as they currently present themselves. It's why we made the asks that we did within our budget submission at the end of last year. But again, going back to the questions that I've been asked today, we have to keep coming back to this because risk continues to evolve and evolve at pace. We have to make sure the organisation keeps pace with that change. So if I have to come back here next year and actually request additional resourcing, or we have to look differently about what we've currently got, then I will be unashamed in doing that. But we have to keep it under constant review. And that's really the challenge we face now as a sector that we didn't face 10 years ago, where actually it was quite straightforward in terms of what we required the fire service to deal with. Now you're dealing with a multiplicity of risk. We just need to make sure we keep pace with that. And if that then means I have to come back and ask for additional resource, or there are other areas that we need to consider, then we will absolutely do that.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Assembly Member Turrell.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, good morning to Deputy Mayor and the Commissioner. Commissioner, how much money does the Fire Brigade spend each year repairing vehicles from damage from potholes?
I would. You'll have to apologise. I'd have to come back with you on the specifics around pothole repairs. But obviously, we're very keen to see the infrastructure be maintained to enable our fire appliances to get where they need to get to. But I'm happy to take a look at it and discuss with our fleet team if we were able to provide some of that information.
I am gutted, Commissioner, that you did not have that information to hand. So please do better next time. So, Deputy Mayor, what measures does the Fire Brigade have in place to deal with the creation of new towns?
The Fire Brigade. Well, as you would have heard John say earlier, that the CRMP is revised every year. And so that will take into account any additional risks that are coming forward as a result of increase in the extent of the urban environment. And the new towns in particular will feature in their review of risk, whether that requires an additional appliance at a neighbouring station, or even a new station, or, as I said, an opportunity to relocate a station that can better serve that new area and its existing area. That would all be looked at through the CRMP.
Thank you for that answer. And Commissioner, are you comfortable that the Fire Brigade will be properly consulted sufficiently at early stages at the two proposed new towns in London?
I am comfortable because of the structures that we've built up over recent years and the relationships that currently exist. But again, it's something we have to keep coming back to time and time again to ensure that our voice is being heard in local planning decisions. And we've had the discussion around statutory versus non-statutory, and I think you know my view. So we have to keep coming back to it, and we have to make sure that our view is being taken into account, that we've got quality housing, but it's quality safe housing, which is the endeavour I know everyone on the Assembly would share.
Thank you for that. Back to you, Jules. Last year I asked the question about with building out with the administration's plan to build outward and potential new towns. I asked about the prospect of new bases being considered or new fire stations being considered in that, and I was told that they weren't being considered. So just picking up from your answer now, the idea of potentially putting new stations in is now back on the table.
I think it's premature to say that specifics are being looked at. I mean, the two potential new towns haven't even been confirmed. So we're a long way, anyone, not just we, I use the word generally, that no one is looking at specific layouts, proposals. So that would come, I think what will happen is that if they and when they are confirmed, one would look at their extent. That would be fed into the CRMP, and that requirement would be established, and then that in turn would be fed back into the master planning of the new town. And then we obviously, inevitably, would be looking at the developers to perhaps make provision for that and to minimise the cost of the public purse. And so if I've said previously it wasn't actually being actively looked at, it would have been in that we're not at that stage yet.
Assembly Member Irani.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for the Commissioner. How do you intend to ensure that the continued delivery of the modern firefighter training programme beyond 26 is continued to be delivered and properly funded, while providing or ensuring that the funding for future pay awards is also taken into account?
Well, just in terms of the question around the modern firefighting, so in terms of the budget gap that we had identified at the end of last year, 8.9 million of that was associated with the modern firefighting training programme. Now, we were quite unashamed about that, because for all the reasons that we've discussed at this morning's Assembly meeting, is that we needed to make sure that our training genuinely reflects the risk that firefighters are now dealing with, and that doesn't come cheap. You know, there's a cost imperative that comes around it, which is why I'm grateful for the position that we've now got to, that we've got to a balanced budget, and the Mayor and the GLA, and it's had cross-party support, I have to say. You know, and I was very grateful for the letter that came from the Budget and Performance Committee at the end of last year that reflected the desire that we needed to bridge that gap and invest in our operational training. And now, when it comes to things like firefighter pay, and again, colleagues around the Assembly will have heard my frustration that it sits out of sync with the budget planning process in terms of firefighter pay is currently being discussed at the moment. So we set our budget without fully realising what those negotiations are going to get to. So we always assume a 2% pay award, but we are also aware that this is a national negotiation which is going on at the moment. And so we're going to need to be able to understand what that looks like once that agreement is reached. But like any good organisation in terms of its financial planning, you know, we have to make sure we've got contingencies and we've got reserves in place to deal with any, not just in terms of firefighter pay, but any type of risk or contingency that we need to deal with. So that's just part of our overarching budget planning, but that does not come at the expense of our operational training programme, which is just a key priority for all the reasons which I've alluded to before.
And that contingency that you mentioned, so if the award, the pay award is different to the 2%, obviously that you've budgeted for, is that something that you're, as you've alluded to, you're going to take out of reserves, or do you have other plans, or do you envisage having to make further cuts?
It will be a combination of what we need to look at, but I'm very conscious there's an ongoing negotiation at the moment between the LGA and the Fire Brigades unions. We need to let those negotiations play out, but like any organisation that has to flex when circumstances change, whether it's to do with pay or any other particular issue that we have to deal with, then we have that built into our system, and we would have to apply that once we know what firefighter pay gets to for the next financial year.
Okay, and just going back to the modern firefighting training programme, so I mean, I've had the pleasure of actually seeing the training operation in Kilburn, where you've had all the technology being tested out, from the drones to the iPads or electronic devices that are being rolled out to make sure that the operation to, well, address or tackle a fire in a high-rise building is properly looked at in terms of training for firefighters. And I've also got a Babcock training centre attached to Harrow Fire Station in my constituency as well. So the importance of these operations, but also facilities, are very important to firefighters. Just looking at the long term, because you've mentioned the short term, how can you ensure that you address in the long term the needs or the training needs of the fire brigade going forward?
Well, I think the answer to that question is around what this College of Fire is going to look like moving forward, because and it was a Grenfell Phase 2 recommendation, which makes me think that it's going to get the resource that it requires to make it actually game changing in terms of national consistency, national standards, something that every fire and rescue service in the UK can coalesce around to deal with the challenges that we're all facing. So I meet regularly with the chair of the National Fire Chiefs Council, Phil Garrigan, to talk about what this next version of the College of Fire looks like, because the good thing is what we have got is excellent training facilities dotted all across the UK. And as we're sending at the moment, we've sent nearly 4,500 London firefighters down to the Fire Service College in the Cotswolds, because really that's unmatched in terms of the training provision that provides. But I also look at what Manchester have got, I look at what Merseyside have got, even the smaller services like West Sussex have got very, very good training facilities. So I think where we're going to get to is centres of excellence across the UK, which London Fire Brigade will be able to take advantage of underneath the umbrella of the College of Fire, which I think will give us world-class training that our firefighters will be able to experience, as well as what we're able to do within the M25 with the facilities that we've already got. And I'm ambitious there, just as much as I'm ambitious with what I think we can do by taking advantage of infrastructure that already exists underneath the banner of a new College of Fire.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, Commissioner, with climate-related emergencies increasing every year, are you confident the fire brigade has the resources needed to respond effectively? Thank you, Chair. The reality is that the risks facing London today are very different from what we dealt with even a few years ago. We are now seeing more heat waves, flooding incidents, and large wildfires, and these events are placing growing pressure on the brigade. Because of that, we've had to rethink how we use our resources, how we train firefighters, and what kind of equipment we invest in moving forward. Does that mean additional spending for the brigade? Yes, absolutely. We're investing more in specialist vehicles, operational training, and equipment that allows crews to deal with these climate-related incidents safely and effectively. But we're also trying to ensure value for money by prioritizing spending in the areas where risk is greatest. Public safety has to remain our top priority. And this is why climate resilience is now part of wider planning across London. It's not only about emergency response after something happens, but also about prevention, infrastructure, and making communities safer in the long term. One issue firefighters often raise is the cost of living in London, especially housing. What support is available for frontline staff? Affordable housing for key workers is a major focus for the mayor, and firefighters are absolutely included within that conversation. We want to ensure that the people protecting London are also able to live and work within the city. From our side, we welcome any opportunity that supports firefighters with housing challenges. Recruitment and retention become much stronger when firefighters can afford to remain connected to the communities they serve. Finally, Commissioner, are you confident the brigade can continue adapting as these risks keep evolving? We have the capability to deal with the risks we currently face, but the key challenge is that those risks continue to evolve very quickly. That means we must constantly review our training, our resources, and our operational planning. If additional support or investment is required in the future, we will continue making that case, because keeping London safe must always come first.